it's not just about picking a spouse for Isaac, but he's picking somebody who's going to be also the future leader of the home. Yes, he's going to be the future leader of the home, the future person to liaise with not just Eliezer, but also Eliezer's descendants who may serve as future stewards also. So you see, it's a very important undertaking, and there's also aspects of her being, as God has taught her during vigil, I think in 2024 or 2025, about how Rebecca was a woman who protected the covenant of God. So she's also someone that is coming into the covenant of God, which is why it's important that Eliezer asks, should Isaac go back there? And Abraham said no. And, the Lord favored Eliezer to meet Rebecca, who was ready to move. So now let's look at other key lessons that are important for us to take note of as people who are forming personal relationships, as people who are in business or branding, and even as people who have employees or are employees or are leaders and have loved ones in the workplace. It's been a very valuable teaching today, but let's look at some key lessons. Number 1, the 4 pillars of vision, alignment, and growth, which is focus, firmness, reaffirmation, and reinforcement. Collectively, these 4, they make a vision to remain on course, grow, and succeed in the long run. Abraham's demonstration of focus, firmness, reaffirmation, and reinforcement shapes a lot about that particular contract agreement. Let me not use the word contract, but it's an agreement between the two of them, right? So those are the 4 pillars of vision, alignment, and growth. You have to have focus, you need to be firm, you need to know when to reaffirm not only yourself but others, and of course reinforcement. Let's look at Eliezer as a person. Who is Eliezer? I've talked about him briefly, but let's go a bit deeper. He's the eldest servant of Abraham. So he served as the head of 317 servants according to Genesis 14:14. So think of him as a chief or principal managing officer. You say a head of HR. Or let's just go chief or principal managing officer. Now, from today's text, it is revealed that certain positions, especially top positions, they are earned through trust and sustained by loyalty, a virtue that makes one to continue to earn trust. So, if you hear the phrase, "Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh," this phrase means oath taking. Whenever anything requires oath taking, it is very important and it is highly confidential. Consequently, parties involved need to reach an agreement on what to do. Let me share why it is very important, why out of 318 servants, Abraham chose Eliezer, the head himself, to take this oath and to carry out this particular agreement. Back then, it's very easy for people to arrange. It's a setup. Think of it like fraud. They will arrange a bride to come into the family, and the bride will form kind of like the member in the fraud plan who siphons money from the family she married into outside, maybe making bad business choices, bad investments, literally sending money from the storehouses or storage to the in-laws, in quotes, the people who set up the scheme. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Making sure the home is a hostile environment, maybe a lot of misunderstandings, not taking care of the elderly that are of poor of health. So maybe the matriarch or the patriarch of the family may end up dying a year or so after the new bride comes into the home from maybe poisoning, poor food, or neglect in some cases. So you see that is a very, very important thing and confidential thing for Isaac to get a bride. And that's why we need the principal chief officer of Abraham's servants to carry out the action. because he knows what is at stake. He's managing the home. Do you see what I'm trying to say here right now? He knows what's at stake. He's managing the home, and directly he has the loyalty, he has the trust of Abraham, and vice versa. Abraham also trusts him, and also I believe they have loyalty between each other. That forms the core of their relationships. So this is why it's very, very important that it was Eliezer that oath was taken with Abraham. So let's look at the third part. Do everything in the name of God. Now let's continue. Do everything in the name of God. Never do anything outside of God. To remain on track, remember we talked about the key lessons under vision, alignment, and growth, right? Focus, firmness, reaffirmation, and reinforcement. So to remain on track, always ask God before you do anything. The instruction, thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of Canaanites among whom I dwell. Also is why, because Abraham is following his agreement with God, his instructions with God that God has given him. Also, people in positions of authority should also always get clarity in order to keep instruction. If you are in a position of authority, remember we talked about how authority is not enough. There needs to be trust and loyalty. Eliezer can only maintain the trust and loyalty that Abraham has, and he has with Abraham in the agreement, by getting clarity, which is why when we broke down today's reading vis-a-vis the architecture of a trust-based or trust and loyalty core agreement, we looked at the clarity session that Eliezer further asked to get more instruction, to know how to fulfill his agreement, to know how to carry out the instruction Abraham gave him. And the fourth point to look at right now is location. These are key lessons, right? We said we're going to look at key lessons. Let's look at number 4, which is location. When you are in a location where people do not fear or serve God, do not engage the services of the occupants of that land in a lifelong institution or a long-term thing. One of the pillars of the architecture of a trust and loyalty based agreement we talked about is aligned interest. We looked at having open long-term goals. So if you're not in a place where the people do not serve or fear God, why would you engage in a long-term or even lifelong institution like marriage with them? It's not advisable. The place may be healthy for physical business, but not institutions like marriage institutions. And we see that in Genesis 24:3, verse 3 to 4, as it were with Abraham. He always sourced workers or partners from amongst the set apart, the chosen elite or children of God. Now, marriage is an institution where you marry one of the same faith with you. Again, back to long-term goals and your motivations and your own definition of success. These are the key lessons. It's a very key lesson in relation to location. Just save yourself from the trouble sometimes. Anyway, in conclusion, we've come to the concluding part. To develop loyalty or to build trust in others, both trust and loyalty are transactional occurrences. If you recall, when we spoke about the elements of trust and the elements of true loyalty, we were able to look at how each of them are reciprocated between parties. I trust you, you trust me. I'm loyal to you, you're loyal to me. So that reciprocation will keep feeding the trust and the loyalty. So they are both transactional currencies, which is why they form their own psychological, almost invisible agreements. They are a core of every agreement, and they also form its own independent agreement at the same time. When you lack both trust and loyalty, or either of them, that particular party will remain stagnant. On the other hand, if you possess both trust and loyalty, the sky becomes your launch pad.